Accommodation and Compliance audio and web training series. I'm Beth Lloyd, and I will be the moderator for today's program called Executive Functioning Accommodations in Self-Employment, featuring Melanie Wetzel, lead consultant for the cognitive team, and Kim Cordingley, who's the head of our entrepreneurship team. But now, before we start the program, I want to go over just a few housekeeping items. First, if any of you experience technical difficulties during the webcast, please call us at 800-526-7234 for voice and hit button 5, or for TTY, call 877-781-9403. Second, we plan to answer as many questions as we can during the presentation. So please send in your questions at any time during the webcast to our email account, question@askjan.org, or you can use the question and answer pod located at the bottom of your screen. To use the pod, just type your question and then submit it to the question queue. Also on the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a file share pod that you can use if you have difficulty viewing the slides or would like to download them. And finally, I want to remind you that at the end of the webcast, if you don't have your pop-ups blocked, an evaluation form will automatically come up on your screen in another window. We really appreciate your feedback, so please stay logged on to fill out the evaluation form. Now let's go ahead and get started with today's program. Kim, take us away.
Thanks, Beth. For today's webcast, we'll be discussing accommodations involving executive functioning in the context of self-employment. Many aspects of becoming self-employed or starting a small business involve processes and activities we would describe as executive functioning, and Melanie will discuss what this involves in more detail in a moment. But we began to notice how these type of accommodation questions came up over and over again in self-employment situations. So we decided this might be a useful topic to address more specifically in a webcast. Before we focus on the accommodation part, I'd like to first talk a bit about how Jan can assist with self-employment and why it can be an important employment option for people with disabilities. My team is available, the entrepreneurship team, in the typical ways you would access Jan services, by phone and TTY, chat and email, and we have a specific Jan on-demand intake for self-employment. While self-employment, small business development, and entrepreneurship are not synonymous, I'll default to saying self-employment most of the time to cover this array of options. And we'll talk in a minute about the types of calls or contacts we get that fall under this umbrella. So when you contact Jan about self-employment, we go through a detailed intake process, and from this we put together a comprehensive packet of materials based on the caller's individual needs, questions, and we put the materials in accessible formats. We provide local, state, and national resources, both disability and business related. And while we aren't doing case management following someone from beginning to the end of the business development process, individuals can contact us as many times as they feel would be helpful as they move through the process. And the scope and type of inquiries we receive are very diverse, from a tourism business focusing on cave exploration to an estate sales agent to a food truck. So let's just look at some of the benefits of self-employment. One of the important benefits is that it's a customized approach, meaning you can control various factors in the design of a business to meet your specific needs. This is particularly true in terms of accommodation opportunities. For many who contact us, choosing self-employment is part of their accommodation strategy, integrating accommodations into the design of their business. For example, being able to start a home-based business to resolve challenges with transportation. So some other benefits include advantages with Social Security and work incentives and the ability to accumulate assets, that it's a very integrated employment approach, and it can be a way to create a livelihood that works best for that individual. Our callers often say they like the idea of entrepreneurship because of the ownership factors and the flexibility in the design of their business, and that it can fulfill a dream and lifelong interests. And many individuals who contact us are artisans, as Griffin Hammis writes. While many modern training programs focus on business management skills, in reality, most small business owners are artisans, concentrating on making their products or delivering their services. And there are challenges, of course. So what are some of these? And we can provide information and resources to address almost any of these. So being self-employed and starting a business is not immediate. It's not easy. It takes time and support and planning. There's a lot of misinformation out there about free money, free grants, and we can help clarify this. There are financial concerns that people have when they're receiving or participating in different benefit programs and how self-employment income will affect that. And then we get questions about funding, and we provide a lot of information about that. Also questions about health care coverage and how that will be affected by the increase in income, how to get the proper supports in place and agencies to cooperate with one another, both disability-related and business-related. And then there are health challenges. We have individuals who might have a chronic illness like frequent migraines, and they need to build in these kind of accommodations for good and bad days. Or ways to anticipate possible future challenges. For example, a woman with MS likes running her business out of a co-working space, away from her home, but also set up a home office so she could eliminate the commute, which depleted her limited energy on bad days. And then the number one important factor is the lack of supports. But many of these challenges can be overcome with proper planning and supports. So looking at entrepreneurial strategies, I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what we're talking about when we're listing these various options. So we often say self-employment, which is basically a person working for themselves, but it could be a small business where the individual has employees. It could be a very, very small business, which would be called a microenterprise. It could be customized self-employment, which is a strategy which unites person-centered planning with the development of a business plan, and it's a planning process which is very individualized and profitable and sustainable, but also meets those individual needs. We get a lot of individuals who are interested in independent contracting. It could be a business within another business, a family business. A lot of times these have to do with agricultural businesses. And we get questions about starting a nonprofit or a social enterprise, which will have a for-profit component to them. And then I just wanted to list some of the keys to success, and this comes out of the research literature and also our experiences at JAN. But just to kind of hone in on these three things. It needs to be a good business idea, meaning it fills a niche, something that somebody's really good at. They're an artisan. They perform a service that's really, that they're very good at. It's an individualized and customized approach, meaning it meets the individual's needs and goals, and there's appropriate support available for that person. And I just wanted to give an idea of the type of businesses that we get calls about. Just to give an idea of the variety, it could be anything from a financial planner to a mobile detailing business. It could be, we pretty much say there hasn't been a business that we haven't gotten a call about since I've been working at JAN. And then I just wanted to talk about the team collaboration. So one of the great things about contacting JAN is we can assist with both the business development process and with accommodation questions. We truly work together across teams. Now I'm going to turn this over to Melanie to talk more specifically about executive functioning, and then we'll move on to some specific accommodation situations and accommodations.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about executive functions. As the name suggests, executive functions are high-level abilities that influence and direct more basic abilities like attention and memory. The term executive function also describes a set of cognitive abilities that control and regulate other specific abilities and behaviors too. Executive functions are necessary for goal-directed behavior, that is, behavior directed towards a goal or completion of a task. Executive functioning includes thinking, paying attention, remembering, planning, and organizing. We know that multitasking is the ability to execute or complete more than one task at a time. Executive functions are necessary for us to be able to successfully carry out these tasks. For example, a person with executive functioning deficits may perform well on tasks that require basic attention, such as answering the phone and taking messages, but will have trouble with tasks that require divided or alternating attention, like answering the phones and taking messages while working on a report and checking the identification badges of individuals who come into the office at the same time. Okay, so executive functions are important for successful adaptation and performance in the daily situations in our lives. They allow us to begin and complete tasks and to persist when we're faced with challenges. We need to be able to recognize unexpected situations and adjust our plans quickly when unusual or sudden events crop up and interfere with our regular routines. They help us to filter out distractions and prioritize tasks. Executive functions are also what keep us from behaving in inappropriate ways. People with impaired executive functions often have difficulty interacting with other people. They may say or do things that seem strange, impolite, or maybe even offensive to others. Most of us experience impulses to do or say things that could get us in trouble, but we're able to suppress those impulses. Individuals with impairments in these areas may not be able to keep these impulses in check, and as a result, may have difficulty fitting in socially. We need to be able to resist impulsive actions and responses. So here's an example. You arrive at work, and your supervisor greets you and states that he would like to meet with you today at 1 o'clock about the Smith account. On your way to your office, where you'll make note of the appointment and the account, you run into several coworkers and join in a conversation about the severe storms that occurred over the weekend. After several minutes of conversation, you take off your coat, hang it on the coat tree, and get yourself a cup of coffee. Executive functioning, particularly working memory, enables you to retain the information about the meeting throughout these unrelated tasks. So let's look here at some more specific areas where executive functions help and direct us. All day, every day, executive functions allow us to make plans, initiate activities or tasks, generate ideas independently, keep track of time, meet deadlines, keep track of more than one thing at a time, retain information while doing something with it. For instance, remembering the phone number while dialing a phone. It also includes past knowledge in current situations, evaluating ideas and reflecting on our work, changing our minds and making mid-course corrections while thinking, reading, and writing, asking for help and knowing where and when to get the information, engaging effectively in groups, and using self-control.
Okay, we're going to look at some examples. So we're going to start with Angela. She contacted Jan with an interest in starting a wellness coaching business. She had worked in this field for many years as an employee, but felt being self-employed would be a better option for her. She described her disability as a mental health impairment with a trauma history and severe anxiety. The anxiety and its cognitive effects were making it difficult with moving forward with the tasks she needed to complete to get her business started. While she was very talented and creative with the actual work of her business, the coaching and training, she found there were certain areas where accommodations would help her be more successful. She stated that putting together a training curriculum or business plan draft, she would edit them over and over again and could not let them go. And she was very anxious about sharing her work with others, so she felt stuck in this never-ending process. She also procrastinated about making phone calls and would put them off, slowing down her progress. And when she was working with a business development or vocational rehab counselor, she tended to get more nervous than normal and felt like she had difficulty in meetings expressing herself clearly. She described the experience as feeling very overwhelmed. And even when she had made a lot of progress with her business planning, she was not demonstrating this effectively in those meetings. And she also left the meetings feeling like not remembering exactly what had happened, and that she couldn't actually bring forward the information that was shared in the meeting for her to improve on what she had already done. And the other issue was that she had a home office, and she anticipated from her experience struggling with some organizational tasks such as scheduling appointments, keeping case notes, billing issues, and so on. And in her most anxious moments, she found that she would skip from one thing to the next without completing things. She could also become distracted and lose track of the task at hand. So Melanie, these were some of the issues she brought up. And the main things that we originally talked about was preparing the training and business plan drafts. She edited excessively, and all of these issues were causing her to procrastinate and not move forward with her business.
And so I would say here she needs to perfect it and pass it on, and then she would be the one to determine how perfect the draft has to be before showing it to someone else. Then go through with it, make the necessary changes, and pass it on. Feedback from someone else may be way more efficient and effective than repeatedly going over it herself. excuse me, we often don't see errors in our own thinking or writing, no matter how many times we review it.
Okay. She also mentioned that she was having difficulty in stressful situations, like meeting with a VR counselor or business development counselor, articulating her ideas, and challenges with organization and completing tasks.
Okay, so I say keep a notebook with the notes and the questions for meetings. Angela could keep a notebook with the notes and questions that she needs to discuss with the counselor. She could also use the notes section on a device to record the same thing. She could break her plan into segments so it's easier to discuss and ask questions about. Section by section may be more manageable than the entire plan. Writing down the questions as she thinks of them, too, and then organizing them later by subject will help. Color coding could really be effective here. For instance, green for insurance items, and then other subjects go in other colors. Also, recording meetings. She could use an app on a device or carry a pocket recorder to record the actual meeting so that she can go over it later as many times as she needs to. Some people find that a 3-ring binder or a spiral notebook with colored tabs or pockets is helpful to place information in by color. For instance, insurance information goes in the green, other subject would go into other colors. And then color-coded checklists, highlighters, sticky notes, even paper clips can help. Making a checklist of things that she needs to do and checking the items off when completed would be beneficial. Color-coding the checklists for easy identification may help. Again, green for insurance matters, other subjects in other colors, but consistent to be easily recognized. Laminated lists to check off and wipe clean, or paper copies for one-time use and toss can also be helpful. You know, I keep talking about color coding here, and we can't stress color coding enough. It can help make a huge difference and make things organized almost instantly when the colors are recognized. Now, it may take effort in the beginning, as organizational systems do, but it will pay off. The use of highlighters, sticky notes, and paper clips will help with the colors.
All right, thanks, Melanie. So next we're going to look at Edith, who was interested in starting a home-based accounting practice. She has a background in accounting and has worked in various corporate settings. She was diagnosed in her early 30s as having Asperger's syndrome or an autism spectrum disorder. She said she prefers to work alone and is easily distracted by noise and visual cues. When working in a large office with cubicles, it was very difficult to tune out everything that was going on around her. She said she also struggles with the politics of the office. She felt self-employment as an accountant would allow her to incorporate some accommodations into her business by simply working independently. However, as she thought this through, she stated she had some concerns. Possible accommodations she would need as a self-employed person. She planned to create a home office and a spare bedroom in her condo, and she shares her living space with an aging parent who will be present during the day. She was concerned that although better than cubicles, she would need to also create a way to stay on task and tune out home-based distractions, such as a dog barking, neighbor's music, or her parent watching TV. She was also concerned it would be very easy to get sidelined by household tasks and helping her parent, so needed a way to separate home and workspace and activities. While she theoretically liked the flexibility of working on her own, the one positive part of working in her previous jobs was that her schedule was set in stone and she liked the structure and routine. She wasn't sure how to create and balance the structure versus flexibility in a home environment and create a more productive workspace. All right, so the main issues here had to do with past difficulties in her corporate work setting and how not to reproduce them in her home environment, having to do with distractions and ways to manage those things. So, Melanie?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about products that Edith could use to help with noise distractions, such as white noise or environmental sound machines, if those aren't too distracting to her. Some people even use a fan. Soft music in the background may be enough to help mask the noise. Noise abatement products, such as sound absorption panels, as well as rugs, heavier lined curtains, even quilts hanging on the walls can help with the sound of everyday life that she may find distracting. Weather stripping the interior doors may help as well. Maybe adding those products to the TV room will help, especially with an elderly parent who has hearing difficulties and turns the volume of the TV way up.
Excellent. So how about separation of home and work life in a home-based business? I think that often gets not thought through a lot when people are thinking about a home-based business, and creating a positive work routine.
Okay, I think setting up the office that works best for the work that you do, or in this case, the work that Edith does. You know, from working at home, you have that ability to make your own schedule and carry it on as if it were set in stone as well. Schedule around the household or parental things that need to be done, but stick to the set schedule, just as if you were going to the office. Look at the placement of office furniture. Did the office where she worked have a good layout that can be copied? The beauty here is that she can set her home office up any way she chooses. I would recommend sitting in the room at various times to get a feel for the sounds, neighborhood routines, garbage trucks, etc., to see what schedule will work best. Placing a desk where you can see out in the neighborhood may work fine for some, but for others it could really sideline concentration and productivity. So having your back to a window or placing heavy curtains on the windows to help with both visual and auditory distractions could help. Think about the workflow and how you would use the items, furniture, equipment, etc., so their placement in the work areas makes the most sense. I think keeping your office, and your home is really an important part. Make sure that the office items stay in the office and the household items don't migrate there. Do the work in the office, not in front of the TV, for instance.
All right, thank you. So we have next Jeff and Claire. This is kind of a customized self-employment example. So Jan was contacted by parent Claire on behalf of her son Jeff, who has an autism spectrum disorder. His mother described Jeff as having high functioning in terms of understanding technology, for example, but struggled with communication, keeping attention to tasks, and maintaining motivation when he wasn't interested in something. He was in the process of transitioning from school to work, and he became involved in a summer program where he learned photography skills, including the technical aspects of using the equipment, setting adjustments, and taking photos in the community. His mother described this interest as bringing him out of his shell. Photography projects got him also interacting with people in his community, encouraging conversations in social situations, and this became his career goal. His parents saw these as very positive developments, and to encourage this, they provided him with photography equipment and other items needed to do this business, such as a laptop. They had begun identifying organizations in their area that could provide additional business and disability supports, and we helped a lot with that. Their goal was to have Jeff to be as independent as possible in operating this business. So the early issues that they identified was that he was motivated by parts of the photography business that he enjoyed, but would avoid the parts that he was less interested in. So he liked getting the camera equipment out, but he didn't like putting it back. He relied heavily on his parents making calls and talking to people on his behalf, and they had done this often throughout his life, and they felt that he was capable of doing more of this on his own and would be more motivated since it was connected to his own business. So they wanted to know what strategies could we suggest to support this increased responsibility. And they had built some customized supports in for Jeff in terms of who would be doing the financial and advertising parts of the business, but they wanted to integrate him as much as possible. So were there any suggestions to help him with a basic system to keep track of financial information, such as reporting the amounts of the photographs he sold? They were particularly interested in something he could carry with him, such as a cell phone app. So this individual is just entering into doing this business, structuring participation, how to kind of help with the less desirable, more desirable, kind of integrate all of those parts. Melanie, any ideas?
Sure. Yeah, I think a flow chart of the required steps would be really important. All of the steps should be documented in order for Jeff to see what it takes to make a success of his business. A thorough understanding of why his business needs to be successful, both personally and financially, and not just fun and interesting, can help him see the big picture. Does he have a car? Does he want a car or an apartment? Does he understand that it takes money in order to purchase or rent? It's important that he sees why he needs funds. Color-coding the tasks in the flow chart might be helpful here to see why all of the tasks are essential and how the tasks build on each other. Different tasks or categories of tasks could be represented in separate colors. Maybe even breaking down the tasks into more manageable steps would help as well.
Okay. And they were also very interested in fostering greater responsibility, autonomy, and involvement in the process, and assisting him so that he became, even though some of this was going to be customized, so that they had people helping with the financial and advertising pieces, but ways to integrate him more in all aspects of the business.
Okay, so looking at a mentor or a job coach, I think obtaining a mentor or job coach could be vital in training Jeff not only to make the calls, but to understand the need to make the calls for his business. Jeff will probably take more direction from a mentor or a coach than a parent. Maybe a flow chart visual of how the business would work, from unpacking, taking the photos, cleaning, packing the camera back up, to the final step of receiving money, or doing a show like a craft fair, something like that, and how the different types of tasks, including the phone calls, fit into his plan. I also think about apps for small business. There are apps that include budgeting, accounting, banking, inventory, making payments, managing staff, managing customers, planning, time management. There was a website called 57 Small Business Apps that every entrepreneur should try. And that would be really helpful for Jeff. Now, he would have to look at those and determine which ones might work best for him. And some of the apps are free, and some of them have a small fee.
Okay, thank you. So we'd like to move on to Eric. Eric contacted Jan with an interest in starting a recycling business, and he had worked in the energy sector prior to his stroke and was good at fixing things. He also had an interest in not throwing things away, but reusing them in different ways. Because of health issues, he felt that working independently and doing a business on his own would be the best option. He also experienced headaches and fatigue. He wanted to be able to work flexibly when he was best able. After the stroke, he struggled with memory issues, including losing track of what he was working on, identifying the sequencing of tasks, organizing his daily routine, and completing one thing at a time. The recycling business required him to organize many items into categories based on where they would go next, some for sale, some for reuse, and so on. It also required him to keep track of what was on his property at any given time. While he created a system of piles, he often felt confused and could not rely completely on his memory to know what items he had. Jan provided him with small business and disability resources to assist with these aspects of being self-employed. But he also wanted accommodation suggestions about a system or set of skills to help him remember and organize these items. He also preferred to do things on paper versus on the computer. He needed a way to cue himself to stay on track, and once he was physically working with the items to be recycled, he got away from the paper and the business parts, meaning he just got caught up in all of the recycling parts, but the business parts were kind of falling away. So Melanie, he has a recycling business, he wants a flexible schedule, manage good and bad days, and struggles with memory issues and staying on task.
Okay, let's first look up at setting up a stamina schedule. And what I mean by that is set up a schedule for when the tasks that need the most mental stamina are done at the time when Eric has the most mental stamina in order to do those, or when he's capable of doing the hard things. And then fill in other times in the schedule with the tasks that aren't as demanding. He can also program or schedule in rest periods, exercise, and lunch breaks. He can set a timer to assist him in adhering to the schedule. And then also posted and laminated keyring checklists. Posted checklists that he can follow in doing the different tasks he has the most difficulty with will help, such as even the sequencing of the tasks. And then a laminated keyring version can also be carried along with him when he's on the move.
All right. And he needs a system for managing the recycled materials and categories, and prefers that it be a mobile and paper-based system versus just sitting in front of a computer.
Okay, so I think keeping a notebook with various colored tabs would be helpful to keep track of the items that he has for sale, the ones he's going to reuse, whatever he's going to do with those would be helpful. Making a colored key in the front of the notebook alerts him to where each section is located. Listing the items in alphabetical order so they may be easily located on the list would be crucial. It might take a while for catch-up, but I would advise having a strict rule about adding items as soon as possible so they don't get lost in time. Maybe planning to take so many minutes a day in order to catalog what he already has in the piles would be helpful too. You know that old saying, about how to eat an elephant. You do it one bite at a time. Also, a strict rule or a habit that would involve marking things off once they're gone would be important for his inventory control. Labeling the piles, as he called them, as they're labeled in the notebook so that everything matches up would also be helpful. Labels or signs can be color-coded as well. And just like I talked about earlier with the insurance always being green, Eric can use color coding to make sure that the things for resale are colored green, for instance, like for cash, or any color that makes sense to him. The important thing is to use the same colors for instant recognition. We do stress color coding. It can make a huge difference in the things you're organizing and will become almost instantly recognizable when the colors are viewed. And again, it may take some time to kind of set that up as any organizational system would, but it'll pay off in the long run. And then for timers, watches, and reminder apps, one watch that we could talk about that would be helpful is it's called a watchminder. It's also in an app form, and it's a timer system that can be set up with 30 daily recurring alarms, such as reminders every 20 minutes to pay attention or to get back to the paperwork or whatever task Eric is performing. It can be used to schedule lunch, rest periods, and reminders to take medications. The time timer watch, it's a clock and it's also an app, show elapsed time in order to help manage time for tasks. As an example, he could set the timer to allow 45 minutes for one task with not only a reminder when it's done, but also the red diskette feature shows how much time you have left, and it helps pace yourself so that you don't get lost in time on one task and leave the others go. And then again, color coding by priority. This is a system that works well for some people, for instance, using red, yellow, and green for the layers of urgency, if there are due dates or deadlines that he wants to keep track of. He would just have to determine what color system makes the most sense to him.
All right, thanks, Melanie. So now we'd like to look at Alexis. She's a self-employed grant writer. She contacted Jan, and she's recently transitioned to being a self-employed grant writer. She'd worked in the nonprofit sector for many years, but felt the often pressured environment of these organizations increased her anxiety and made her less productive. She described herself as having a mild head injury and mental health impairment, particularly anxiety. Over the years, she had experienced difficult interactions with coworkers and found it hard to restrain her comments. The pressure of these situations and distractions she felt caused her to be less productive. She was someone who always wanted to do an excellent job, so she triple-checked things and described herself as a bit of a perfectionist. When she felt she was unable to do her best work, she became more anxious and depressed. She also knew that writing tended to take her longer than some, and she worked better when no one was around. She described herself as an excellent grant writer and was confident about this. Being self-employed made a lot of sense to her, so she had begun to work as an independent contractor from her home office. But then she began running into some problems. Even though she was self-employed, she needed to develop plans and contacts with various organizations and encountered similar issues as when competitively employed. She had to rely on individuals in a variety of organizations she did not know well and who sometimes did not meet their commitments in a timely fashion. While aspects of being self-employed and working independently were very positive, in other ways, self-employment only restructured these relationships and the same issues began to surface. For example, when personality conflicts began to occur, Alexis became frustrated and less productive. While she was trying to build up a consistent client base, she worried about getting a reputation as being difficult to work with. She expected everyone to have the same work ethic as she does. Being an independent contractor actually meant encountering even more people from a variety of organizations and interactions she found even more challenging. And so this created a new stress for her and problems in her productivity. She worried that this was going to affect her business and her potential success. So we have someone who is working independently in the nonprofit sector as a grant writer and difficulty interacting with coworkers, meeting expectations, and being able to work productively in those situations.
Okay. First, I would say she would want to communicate in writing as much as possible, emails, letters, etc., in order to limit anxiety from personal conversations. And that also provides documentation of the conversations that she's had. Now, moving on there to standard operating procedures, she could have a standard set of questions or guidelines to go by as much as possible to make the interactions more uniform and routine, and then people would come to know what was expected. And I think stressing deadlines and time frames would be crucial in getting those put in writing as well, so that others would be more aware of them. And then again, that provides documentation about what was agreed upon.
Okay. So the other issues included managing social anxiety and frustration, developing better customer service skills, and in fact thinking about being an independent contractor as being, meeting a customer's needs, kind of reframing that relationship, and then managing anxiety when having to collaborate with others.
Okay, so I think helping to manage social anxiety and frustration, a good thing would be to work with a coach on social and communication skills, and that could help reduce some of the anxiety that she experiences in the social interactions that are necessary in her line of employment. I think it would give her more self-confidence as well. For stress management techniques, those can be used to help eliminate or reduce stress and anxiety throughout the day. Techniques include flexible breaks, exercise, apps for handling stress and anxiety, and a support person to contact. And she could build those right in her schedule if she felt she needed to have regular intervals of breaks, or schedule a break that comes up when she needs to if she had some sort of particularly stressing interaction with somebody or conversation. I think a coach would also work. We pointed out that that could help her improve social and communication skills and reduce some of the anxiety. But I think a coach might also be effective for instruction in business etiquette, helping her feel more confident dealing with the very people that she interacts with. And then for repeat clients, I think that she could work to determine if some clients are really worth working with again, if the stress is too high for her, or at least she could keep a list of preferred clients who are easier to work with and who aren't as detrimental to her productivity. And again, the stress management techniques, those can be beneficial to help eliminate or reduce stress and anxiety throughout the day. And like I just mentioned a minute ago, flexible breaks are really helpful. Exercise, that can even be done kind of standing in place. There are all kinds of different ways to exercise that can be done very quickly in the moment. And there are lots of different apps, too, and we can give information about that if someone's interested. We have listing for different apps for stress management and anxiety, and then a support person also that she could have, that she could contact when she's feeling particularly stressed.
Okay, thanks, Melanie. Okay, now we'd like to look at Leonard, who's a self-employed musician. Jen actually gets calls from lots of different artists and musicians who are interested in self-employment. So Leonard contacted us with an interest in being a musician, and he was a musician and composer, and he had formal music training and wanted to focus on performance. He talked about his love of music and that it was something he excelled at. As an adult, he was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder, but prior to this diagnosis had self-medicated with drugs and alcohol. Due to the side effects of the prescribed medication, as well as the residual effects of past drug and alcohol use, he experienced a number of cognitive memory issues. He had difficulty remembering things unless they were written down. He often forgot appointments. With his music, Leonard found this bypassed many of these cognitive issues. However, in performance settings, he needed to have his set planned out ahead of time, or when on stage, he would get lost. In order to arrange performance dates, he needed to be very organized, arrange meetings and phone calls, and keep careful track of these contacts and conversations. He often had to call people back more than once and leave messages. Leonard said that sometimes he forgot who he had spoken to, and it was confusing. While his current medication was very helpful in terms of mood regulation, he still struggled with big ideas in terms of his creative process. It was difficult to balance his excitement about a new idea, such as managing other musicians or starting a record label, with the day-to-day activities of developing his business step by step. He still had concerns for the best way to handle day-to-day business activities in a conscientious way, which he felt could make the difference between developing a successful music career. So he was dealing with some of these cognitive and memory issues as a result of past drug use and current medications that he was taking that were very helpful to him and allowing him to consider self-employment as an option. And playing the music seems to have bypassed all of these issues. It's more with running the business that he had the issues. So some of the issues came up regarding arranging performance dates, tracking phone calls and emails, reminders, callbacks, and keeping track of conversations.
Okay. I think for a running record of contacts, Leonard really needs to have a process for keeping a running record of the contacts he makes. When he made them, what was discussed, and the next steps he needs to take, instead of relying on his impaired memory. He might consider the use of a custom-designed sheet where the pertinent information or categories of information can be printed on it, as it makes the most sense to Leonard, so there's less writing for him, and then it's organized for him while he's actually on the phone. It could be like an advanced organizer, that's just another name, and it's designed in the way to capture the most information for his needs. Now, the use of one location, organization, and focus. If possible, Leonard should make those calls from a home or office location where he would have his organizational tools and the ability to focus. You'd be surprised at the people I've called back just here at Jan who answer their phone no matter where they are, what they're doing, and in no way are they able to concentrate and organize their thoughts or even hear due to background noises and other things that are going on. So being prepared for gathering information and confirming dates when returning calls would not only be more helpful to Leonard, but it would be much more professional as well. So a color-coded large calendar. This is a really good idea. I love this, and there are people who still use paper planners and calendars. So recording the information on a large calendar where the dates would already be available would make it easy for Leonard to document the time, who he spoke to, and the subject of the call in a brief way. Color coding could be extremely helpful here in regards to the status of the information on his calendar. Colored stickers could be used that could be removed or another color placed over the first one in order for him to see at a glance where he was with each caller or performance. He could color code by type of call or type of contact so that he could see them with a minimum of memory. He could also use the call log of his phone to help record information into the calendar later, using the notes section on the phone for specific information. He could also use a calendar system to sync across devices, and that would be a digital calendar that he could have at his fingertips wherever he is, wherever it's needed, he would have that. But I think one of the most important things would be to choose what works and stick with it. He needs to choose like one means of organization and stick with it. Whatever system makes the most sense to him, but he needs to make it routine. And then lastly there, managing his big ideas. I called that prioritizing the mundane. I think a music business mentor to assist him in the day-to-day less interesting tasks may be helpful. It works for some folks to do the things they like the least first so that the less favored tasks are out of the way, leaving the things that they love to do. It can create a smoother day, and the good feeling that results feels like a reward. It's always good to build rewards into your day. He could be strategic by setting a specific time each day or evening to do the big idea things once he has completed the more mundane tasks while he had the mental energy for those. For some, that's early in the day. For others, it's later in the afternoon or evening. We talked about this with Eric. It could be just as helpful for Leonard to set up a stamina schedule where the tasks that are the most taxing for him are done at the times of day when he has the most mental and physical stamina.
And that's interesting because one of the things that's happened in the music industry lately is that they've offered courses called the Business of Music. So there's a lot more mentorship kind of programs. That's one thing that we were able to pass on to Leonard. So that's the end of our examples for different accommodation, executive functioning accommodations in terms of self-employment. And so we can take some questions.
All right, the first question has to do with the case involving Edith. And Melanie, someone wanted you to expand on the accommodation needs for Edith. Do you have anything else there in your notes?
I do. I think
Okay.
I sort of actually skipped a little section here, so this is a good opportunity to go back. I think one of the things is really important is to make a schedule, stick to a routine. Talked about that with Leonard, talk about that with Eric. And it would work for Edith. It works for everyone, really. If she liked the schedule she had at work, she could duplicate that at home as much as possible. If there were things that didn't work, she could change those to what does work. And, just because you set it in stone the first week doesn't mean that that can't change if you find that that really isn't helpful for you because of things that are going on in the neighborhood or things that were going on with her parent. We have a publication that's called What's in a Routine, and that can be very helpful for Edith, for Eric, for Leonard, and I think mostly for all of us. And here are some points from that. Keep a strict morning schedule, just as if you're going to the office. You're working from home. It's not like you just have all morning to sit around in your pajamas and drink coffee and watch TV. You would get in a routine to get started at work, just like you would if you were leaving home. Be aware of time-sensitive tasks. Make sure that you know when the tasks have to be done in a certain time or due. Then you can plug in other tasks around those. Factor in how long tasks should take and pace yourself. Cluster tasks that are similar so you can complete them while you're in the zone. Assess your day as to when you have the most mental energy and stamina to do the most difficult tasks. Using checklists, we all use checklists, don't we? There are various kinds of checklists with different functions that can help you work more effectively. A checklist of tasks to be done or one that involves steps in a procedure are just two examples. A list of what needs to be done tomorrow, maybe before you leave work today, can help limit the time that you'll spend in the morning spinning your wheels. Make use of calendars and planners, whether they're paper or electronic. Plan regular meetings with a mentor or a coach to set goals and help stay on task. Schedule 5 to 10 minutes daily at the end of your day or your shift to clean up your desk or your work area. This can alleviate the need to spend more massive amounts of time later for a thorough cleanup. We all work more efficiently without the distraction of clutter. Incorporate an evening routine at home to save you time in the morning, just as if you were leaving the home and going to the workplace. And some of those things might involve, having your clothes ready, having your food ready. Do you take a lunch break? Do you need food prepared ahead of time? And all these could certainly differ from day to day, but a formal schedule that's set in stone would allow Edith the confidence she needs to know from day to day that she can get the work done. And just because her office is in her home doesn't mean that she won't have trouble getting to work on time. There are many distractions in the home that can tie a person up when they're working from home as when they're heading out to an office. And that's just a few points here. Having a routine of putting and keeping things in their place, such as keys, your phone, your glasses. Prepare for the next day's work the night before. Create a checklist for yourself and others in your home that might need to be organized as well. Place sticky notes on the door, mirror, fridge, or wherever you'll see them. Turn off distractions, and that could include your cell phone and the Today Show. And then also you can set a timer or a programmable watch to help pace yourself in the mornings.
Okay, great, Melanie. We actually had a question about where to find that article before you mentioned it. It's a blog, correct? It's one of our blogs?
Yes.
From 2016. So you can get that off of our website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we had, let's see, here's a question about people want to know more about the apps. So
Okay.
where can we direct them?
Okay.
Small business apps, organization apps, all the apps.
There are just tons and tons of apps, and I think Melanie found an article that just talks specifically about small business apps.
Yeah, this one was called the 57 Small Business Apps That Every Entrepreneur Should Try. Yeah. And there were 57 of them.
Yeah. A lot of those kind of business support apps, information about that, we can provide some of that, but we always are encouraging people to link up with those small business counselors in their area or women's business centers. They often have a lot of that information in their offices, in their libraries that people can access to try out, and depending on what that person's particular needs are. It's like anything. If you search for small business apps, you're going to come up with like 10,000 hits. So you really want to find out specifically what your needs are, and we can help kind of sort those needs out and get you to resources where you can find that information.
Okay, let's see. Do we have tools to help individuals learn Microsoft Office suite apps or Excel or things like that that might benefit individuals.
We can find those programs usually in people's local area. If there's an accommodation piece to it, in terms of accessibility, we can get that information to them as well through Jan.
Okay, this individual is looking for how to keep track of phone calls received on the road. This person says it requires extensive travel, and there are times that I have to take calls while driving or away from the office. And knowing you two, I know you're going to say don't take calls while you're driving.
Exactly. Never take a call when you're driving.
Pull off. Or what I would say there about the Leonard is when you take calls just out of the blue, you may not be prepared, you may not be organized, you may be going through a stop sign or whatever if you're driving. Pull off, or wait till you take a break and then look back at your phone log, at the messages left, look to make those calls all at one time so you can have your materials with you. If you have a notebook that you keep those in, or however you're organized, a planner, and that way you can have your attention and focus can be on those phone calls and not something else. I mean, we get calls from people who just call at the spur of the moment. They're going through the drive-thru because I've actually heard them say, "You want cheese on that?" So I know they're not really listening to what I'm saying. And then the person you're talking to might hear those sounds too, and it's really is not that professional. So I would say you want to, if you need to pull off and take a break, and several times a day to do the phone calls, do that. Pull off at a rest stop or coffee shop or something, and organize yourself to make those calls at that time, and then take note of them.
Yeah, and I would just say that a lot of times individuals have been trying to reach people repeatedly, so when they get that call, they're going to take it regardless of where they are. And then the thing is just as soon as you have an opportunity, recount, take down what happened in that call, what time it came in, who you spoke with, what the gist of it was, and keeping track of that information and being able to go back to it is invaluable.
Tell you what helped me was I changed my message. And that reminded people that they needed to leave their name and also leave a phone number, because my phone, if I'm out of service, and a lot of times here in West Virginia you're out of service, it doesn't record the number automatically. And that can make it really confusing when you take a lot of calls related to your work. So I changed my message to say, please always leave your number when you contact me. Because some people will think, hey, Beth got my message, when I have no record of the telephone number that the person called from. So I think that helps. And also a reminder to let people know, if I don't get back to you in 24 hours or 48 hours, call me again, as there might be some reason I didn't get your message.
Right. You could also have on there what would be the best time for you to contact that person back, and that might help you be able to reach them when you try.
Yeah.
And I just want to add that with all of this, it really is a matter of trying things out to see what works best, and making adjustments like any accommodation process.
Okay. We have a couple of questions about, people needing help, specific help related to interventions or accommodations, like accessing a screen reader, reading web pages and articles, again, the different kinds of apps. Where can people go to get this information, and can they contact Jan to do that?
Well, certainly on the accessibility screen reader information. And again, when we do self-employment intake, we get real specific information about what they're needing or what they think they might need, and then we'll put that individualized material together for whoever contacts us. And if we don't have that information, we'll get them to the organizations that we think will best be able to do that.
So I think for people who have specific accommodation questions today, rather than us trying to cram it in here, it'd be good to contact us.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we can refer them to the specific apps or refer them to the screen reader information that they need. Here's a suggestion from one of our attendees today. This person says something that I've found has helped me is when working on a long project, when you have to stop, leave at a spot you're really excited about. This makes it easier to get back in the groove.
Oh, that is a good idea.
Very good point.
Yeah, because if you leave at a bad point, you're just going to put that off and put that off.
Right.
Okay, let's see. So I had some questions about farmers and veterans, and the three of us have talked about this a lot. And you guys give kind of context for the veterans that are coming back with certain limitations, and they're getting into starting their own small businesses related to farming.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of their skills
Right.
to do farming, a lot of engineering skills, mechanical skills, biology, chemistry. What's kind of your take on that, Kim?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good resources out there to help with that because some programs have developed specifically for veterans interested in agriculture. And also you have a lot of veterans returning to very rural spaces that have, where agriculture is a major industry. But there's also been, I think, some research that's shown that just the skills that are bringing to that really are an advantage if they're looking at careers in farming. And again, it's the ability to, make accommodations as part of the process. And agri-ability works with some of the kind of modifications with tools, but also just, some programs have worked specifically with veterans with PTSD and being outside, moving around. All of those things have proven to be very beneficial.
Well, I was just going to say that. I think they're found to be very therapeutic, the farming, beekeeping. There are programs for beekeeping that are really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And we do get quite a few callers who are interested, who are veterans who are interested in agriculture and wanting to go back to the communities that they left. So self-employment makes a lot of sense to them.
So I was asking, where can we get more information on accommodations for executive functioning limitations? And I had one person even ask exactly what do you mean by executive functioning, Melanie? Can you elaborate on that?
Right, sure. That's kind of like what we talked about in the beginning. Those are high-level abilities that influence and direct other abilities that we have, mainly attention and memory, because most of what we have most of our abilities build on that. And so it's basically thinking, paying attention, remembering, planning, and organizing. I guess that's probably the easiest, most basic way to define it. And we do have information on executive functioning on our website. If you go to the home page and the menu at the top of the page, the A to Z, and then you can go to by limitation, and there's a section there on executive functioning deficits. And then we also have that same information included in publications we have on ADHD, brain injury, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, mental health impairments, autism.
And those are under our A to D by disability, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good info in there. So both of you talked about working in cubicle environments. I know for some of the new types of self-employment, they have the shared workspaces in the communities.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work? Do you have any experience with accommodations in those situations? Or
Usually people who choose to work in like a co-working space, which is basically like an office space that's shared by a number of self-employed individuals, and they share certain things like the copier. It cuts down on those startup costs because you have an address, you have copier. And in some of these programs, they actually have a mentor that's right on site, and you pay like a monthly fee to be able to be there. And it's an office space, too, if you want to meet with clients. And so some people work really great in collaborative situations, and that actually, having that camaraderie and other people kind of going through that development process is really very beneficial. But, and then there are others that just that need it very quiet,
Mm-hmm.
that prefer to, that need that ability to concentrate, and that's a major factor in their productivity. So it's really individualized, and like the example where the person likes being in a co-working space some of the time, and some of the points wanted to be able to work from home. So it really depends on what, works best for that individual.
And I would say looking at each individual space, too, because there may be times during the day when people are scheduled and there's not as many people there, or people who are meeting with clients or who are causing more distraction may not be there. So there may be optimal times throughout the day when there are less people there.
We have a couple of people that make comments on those collaborative workspaces. Someone says there's one in Springfield that's very cool, and a couple other people said that those are really good ideas. So gives you more flexibility.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and they actually have some of those spaces that are kind of incubator spaces too, if you're starting like a food business. And we provide information about all of those kinds of spaces in a particular area if someone's interested in that, so we can provide that referral.
Okay. All right. So we had some people asking about what types of skills assessments might be out there to help people narrow their skills for what types of businesses they might be good at. And then we had some questions about funding resources, because some people have said that voc rehab funding, of course, is limited. And that's especially true depending on the time of the year and the order of selection. So for those types of questions, self-employment assessments and funding, where can people go, Kim?
I'd say they should call me or contact me, however they prefer to get in touch with us. The reason it's difficult to give kind of an overview answer to that is because things vary a lot depending on location and type of business and the amount of money to start up the business. We certainly provide information about how vocational rehabilitation and those services can help. Ways to use Social Security work incentives can be really beneficial to provide supports in the startup of the business, and we'll get people hooked up with that information. But we also put them in touch with local, every community. I'll pick one just randomly, like Milwaukee. I was assisting someone in Milwaukee, and there were a whole array of different types of programs based in economic development, neighborhood, business development that may have been beneficial to that person. So we'll get very specific in terms of the funding resources that might be available to that person. But also, we provide a lot of consumer protection supports because there's a lot of misinformation out there about funding resources, and we want people to have that information because, they're always targeting people who are interested in starting businesses. But I will put that together for anybody who contacts us.
Great. So I just want to thank Melanie and Kim today. It was great information. So that is all the time that we have. If you need additional information or you want to discuss an accommodation or ADA issue, please feel free to contact us. We do thank you for attending. Thank you also to Alternative Communication Services for providing the net captioning. We hope the program was useful, and as mentioned earlier, an evaluation form will